on next week, 22nd and the 23rd of August. Now, ECOWAS is technically at war. ECOWAS risks disintegration, and I'll try to demonstrate this while I wait for my guest to join us on this platform. It is at risk of disintegration because if you look at ECOWAS as a bloc, we are made up of French-speaking countries and English-speaking countries. Now, one thing that is of importance to us is that as we speak, we know that ECOWAS security chiefs are supposed to have met in Accra. Whatever decisions they have taken, we may be told later. But ECOWAS is beating war drums. Yesterday, we know that the Parliamentary Select Committee on Defense and Interior met the security couples in Ghana. I understand the IGP was there, the Defense Minister was there, the Interior Minister was there, MPs were divided. We don't know where Ghana is going to. And I also can tell you that Ghana itself does not even know how many Ghanaians are in Niger if we want to go there. Because if Ghana is hosting meetings that may take a final decision to go to that country, Ghana will be a target. How many Ghanaians are in Niger? We don't know. So today I went to the website of Ghana's embassy in Niger, and it was very funny. Not even travel advisory as the US or the UK would have done by now, asking Ghanaians there maybe to leave or plans to evacuate them. I know that in days after the coup, even hours after the coup, French started telling its nationals to go. Israel, you have other Western countries which have moved their nationals. Beyond this, I want you to look at the map of ECOWAS. And if you look at the map of ECOWAS, as I said, look at Niger, look at Mali, look at Guinea, and look at Burkina Faso. Now, the four countries have pledged to work together in the interest of Niger if ECOWAS should go there. And I know Chad is also interested in Niger's interest. Again, we know Algeria and some other French-speaking countries have pledged to give support to Niger. So if ECOWAS decides to go to Niger, it would mean that Niger, Burkina Faso, Cote d'Ivoire, Guinea will be fighting the southern belt of West Africa. And all the countries at the top are French-speaking countries. They can decide to break off. That is one potential incident that we may not want to witness as we move along. And then in the course of this conversation, I realized that it appears there is a pseudo war between Russia and the West, because we know Russia has elements in Burkina Faso, they are in Guinea, they are in Mali, and of course, even though Putin is asking ECOWAS not to go there and attack, they are interested in getting there quickly, and there are rumors that the Wagner forces and his forces are already embedded in Niger. And so the question is, why will this happen to many people here in our part of the world? If there should be any chaos in Niger, it will spread across the belt. What is important is that many people, you can take the map of ECOWAS out, and if you can, help me share with our viewers what happened in Cote d'Ivoire just 4 days ago. French troops had mounted roadblocks in Cote d'Ivoire. Don't forget that Niger has recalled its ambassador to Cote d'Ivoire because of comments by Alassane Ouattara. And French troops had mounted roadblocks in Cote d'Ivoire. Now listen, if you can just give us sound, let's listen to the interaction there. It's rolling. As the video is rolling, you will notice that this is a precarious situation because France should be scared by now. It has been kicked out in 4 or 5 major countries in West Africa. What is left is Togo, Benin, Cote d'Ivoire. And if they are mounting roadblocks in somebody's country and the people are reacting this way, it will tell you that it is heightening tension in Cote d'Ivoire, which itself is another threat to the sub-region. Let's pray nothing bad happens in that country. And then I quickly referenced my research to what happened within the sub-region which brought about the name ECOWAS. So I pulled some old videos, and you see West African soldiers who went to that war-torn country in an attempt to maintain peace and order, but they ended up fighting the rebels. Many Ghanaian soldiers died. Some remain maimed as we speak. In the video that I'll be sharing, you see dead bodies on the streets. They could be me or you. They could be a businessman or a poor man on the street. And that is what happened in Liberia. It happened in Sierra Leone. We know ECOWAS forces were in other West African countries, some for peacekeeping operations, others it was plain war, open fights between soldiers, and Ghanaian soldiers were there. Tonight, we'll be making an attempt to speak to some ECOWAS soldiers, some former soldiers who fought in Liberia, to share their experience with us, because the popular call on the ground is that ECOWAS should tread cautiously. And that is what is informing my conversation tonight. Before I introduce my guest, I want you to reflect on this. Just after independence, Ghana gained its independence in 1957, and we became a republic, is it 1960 or 61? 1960, right. And then just about 7 years after our independence, we were now experiencing coup d'etats within Africa. So the late 60s, the 70s, and the early to mid 80s, there were coups all over. Initially, late 60s, 70s, whenever there is a coup, they say they are aligned to Russia, to the socialists. And then eventually, when the Soviet Union broke down, we said we were embracing democracy. But is this the democracy that is practiced in the US, in the UK, in France, in Germany? And are the leaders in these countries who are quick to evacuate their nationals, who are giving red carpets to old African leaders, who are selfish and greedy, who are mismanaging institutions, who are ruling us as if they are dictators, the ones creating this problem, or they have become puppets of the West, or by extension, Russia? And that is why you and I must suffer. That is going to form the first part of my conversation tonight. My guest is an elderly statesman. That's how I call him, because Ghanaians respect him for his opinion. Many times when people have lived their life and have a lot of experience to share, some decide to retire on the quiet. But there are few bold ones who speak truth to power, and they have earned the respect of the general public. The man I'm going to speak to, I'll be brief, is a lecturer, is a communications consultant, and a motivational speaker. He's called Dr. Akofa Segbefia. I'll begin this conversation with him before we speak to some former soldiers who were in Liberia and Sierra Leone, who witnessed the war, when our leaders marched them there to save lives or to fight for their interest. Doc, you are welcome.
Thank you. Rico.
I tried to do...
Can I call you Rico?
Yes, you can call me Rico. The last conversation generated some little controversy. I don't want to go there. But let's talk about yes. Niger. Niger is in crisis. Already, we are beginning to feel the impact. We are told onion prices has gone up. We are told that beans, legumes, for example, we import some variety from that country. I went to check the trade between Ghana and Niger, and it's in millions, not huge per se, but we know that the transnational trade between the countries within the sub-region will reflect what we are told. I checked on some sites, and I understand that Nigeria has already lost over $1 billion as a result of the closure of the border with Niger. Nigerian clerics have been to Niger in an attempt to foster some kind of, or trigger some kind of diplomatic talks, because they have an interest in what will happen in this country. Now, if you look at the preamble, which drew our attention back to the old days and where we have marched to declining democracy in West Africa, how do you feel as somebody who has seen it all?
I feel terrible. I feel terrible, but I'm not surprised by what is happening in Francophone West Africa. The question a lot of people are not asking is, how come these upheavals, very recent upheavals, are occurring in Francophone Africa or Francophone West Africa? I have said it time without number that the French influence on their former colonies is the reason why Africa can never unite. Because of the stranglehold that France has over its former territories. And for example, even until in mid-90s, every Francophone African head of state was a member of the French Parliament. Mm-hmm. Francophone Africa is mandated by law to keep their foreign reserves in the Central Bank of France. And if those countries go broke and they need bailout or they need loans, like we are now, dallying with IMF, they went to Paris, borrowed their own money, paid the interest to France. When France had colonized all these countries, they built their presidential palaces. Francophone Africa pays rent
on their own land,
on their own presidential palaces to France. So, and those were the days where you had semi-educated people running affairs in those countries, so they could pander to the whims of their colonial masters. But now, we have young, up-and-coming Francophone African citizens who have read the history and who know what France is doing to their countries. So as a result, they are wisening up, and because the African has the penchant for electing aged people into leadership, so the youth rather have no other alternative than to join the armed forces and then usurp the kind of democracies that those countries are practicing. So you realize that this thing started from Guinea, and then Burkina Faso, Mali, and now it's Niger. The question that we want to ask, how come ECOWAS didn't decide to invade Guinea? Why not Burkina Faso? Why not Mali? Because those countries don't matter to the United States and France so much. But uranium alone, mined in Niger, gives France 30% of its energy supply. So you see the interest. They have gold, they have iron ore. They also have the materials, I am told, that is used in the production of californium. Californium is a radioactive material used in nuclear technology. Only Russia and America produce californium. 1 gram of californium is $27 million.
1 gram?
1 gram, not 1 kilogram. 1 gram sells for $27 million. So you see why America would have a military base in Niger. France has a military base in Niger. Now, Niger territory is also being used to, pipe gas from the African continent to Europe. So with what is happening, the fear for the West is that, that is likely to be sabotaged. The fear also is that once these things are taking hold, the Wagner Group are also cashing in. But France has itself to blame. In my estimation, they have themselves to blame.
Now, I will let you continue at this stage, but we had the Francois Mitterrand's, Jacques Chirac's, who led France. In as much as I agree that maybe 20 years ago, 30 years ago, the educated population among the youth group in those countries may have been lesser, and people are now becoming more awakened today. One may think that it is Macron today who perhaps is failing his country's interest in Africa, and for which reason we are seeing these coups just happening in successions.
Yes, you see, Macron is becoming very rambunctious. You understand that? He is sounding very provocative at times. Maybe he is too young for, to rule a country like France, but then that does not also take away the fact that the youth in Francophone Africa are also waking up to the realities, to what is being done to their countries, to what is being done to their economies. And as a result of that, they think that it's about time they took their own destiny in their own hands.
And it's almost like what Obasanjo was telling the youth in Africa when he addressed an event at Winneba, I think some few days ago. But I've put some text that I'll share. I've named it ECOWAS Leadership Crisis. And you see that it says ECOWAS still faces different forms of obstacles that frustrate its efforts at regional integration. This ranges from corruption, political instability, domineering tendencies of some states, terrorism, among others.
You have put it very succinctly.
Now, the reason why I've put it there, which will inform the question I'm asking, is that while we are going to hear your response to why the leadership crisis in ECOWAS is a major problem today, and which is rather the security threat to the masses within the sub-region and Africa at large, is the video that will accompany your response, which reflects a happy people in Niger who have totally welcomed the new regime regardless of the thinking of African leaders.
Yes, you see, personally, I don't take ECOWAS seriously. Since its inception in 1975, I guess, it's become a talk shop. And as a result of that, for example, let me give you certain typical examples. The people who are in leadership of ECOWAS themselves, who are now preaching that, for example, Alassane Ouattara next door in Côte d'Ivoire, I think he was also in Abuja,
right,
telling the soldiers to hand over to the elected, when he himself had amended his own country's constitution to perpetuate himself in power. He's a puppet of the West. We all know it, and he knows it.
And so while you are talking, look at the masses, and these are the people who have come on the streets. So ECOWAS is going to fight people in their own country who accept what is going on. But go ahead.
You see, we saw what happened in the video clip from Côte d'Ivoire.
Right.
And somebody was asking the French soldier, "Is this your country?"
And that is a woman.
Yes. Fortunately, because I speak French, I read what the lady was saying, and I heard it. You understand that? Is this your country? Could they have done that? Could France have been in the streets of, Mali, in the streets of Burkina Faso, doing this kind of thing? They won't have it easy. You see, and now, Macky Sall, Senegal, he was also there asking the soldiers to hand over to Mohamed Bazoum. I don't have a problem with whatever they want to say, but you want to listen to who is talking. There is an account saying, he, until very recently, wanted to amend the Senegalese constitution to remain in power. He has imprisoned all the opposition party members, and he is preaching democracy here in Ghana. When Alassane Ouattara wanted to amend the constitution, and indeed amended the constitution, which was wrong, ECOWAS did not raise a finger. If that had happened in the European Union, the other members would have called the country involved and said, "Look, you do this, we drop you off." But When Alassane Ouattara was elected, our president, Nana Akufo-Addo, was the first person to go there to congratulate him. You see the hypocrisy? Now, ECOWAS, Ahmed Bola Tinubu has not even taken his position as president of Nigeria.
He is being challenged as the elected president of Ghana, but ECOWAS has elected him as their chairman.
He has the election results are even in court. The man has not even formed his cabinet yet. He's just been, declared the winner of the Nigerian election.
So what do you think about ECOWAS
It's
president?
a crazy institution. It's a crazy institution. Look, I don't have any respect for ECOWAS and it's whatever it is that they are talking about. Why? So now, assuming that ECOWAS agrees to go into Niger, in whose interest? That's the question ECOWAS must answer. Is it the interest of the United States of America or the interest of France or their own interest? Those guys out there, the Yankees and the French, they don't care whether we slaughter one another. They don't care. At the end of the day, you know what they're going to do? They're going to sell their arms to both factions and make their money.
And for the purpose of this conversation, if the producers can roll some of the visuals of the atrocities in Liberia, in Sierra Leone, and other African countries that are put together, that is going to reflect the Nigerians and perhaps African troops who will be slaughtered in the unpopular war that is unfolding should ECOWAS leaders go. But go ahead, Doc.
If France and America feel that the force must be used to kick out the soldiers, they should send down their own troops. They shouldn't use us. We cannot fight their proxy war for them. We can't fight. We should not allow this thing to happen. And it's about time each African country that has foreign military base on their soil should get them to leave. The American soldiers who have commandeered our Terminal 1 at Kotoka Airport, we don't know what they take out of this country. We don't know what they bring in because there are no immigration personnel there. We don't know if there are customs personnel over there. We just give unfettered access to our territory. Not even our commander-in-chief can visit the American military base here in Ghana. What kind of nonsense is this? And you see, would America tolerate this thing on its soil? Why do we have leaders who have gumption?
What really could be the problem? Because this is not limited to, let's say, Ghana or Togo or any other West African countries. Now, if you look at the Lomé Convention, for example, in 2000, later 2005, when they were looking at the protocols that will guide how they operate, they were looking at good governance. Later, African Union came and the charter was talking about the need to enhance democracy. So you remember we had the Africa peer review mechanism and so on. So the ideal thing is that ECOWAS leaders must be checkmating themselves. But it appears as if that is not happening.
No, you see, they see themselves as a club of equals. So our colleague must not be touched by anybody else. Mm-hmm. But you see, the democracy that is practiced in the West will not work on our continent.
Why?
You see, because, America has been independent for the past 249 years.
Right.
Huh? America is still divided through the middle between the Democrats and the Republicans, even as we speak. You understand what I'm saying? And then we in Ghana, we have a hybrid of American democratic practice and the Westminster. And even that one, we have not even mastered it because we have leaders who are not accountable to us. You understand what I'm saying? You can't ask questions. We have leaders who are, I wonder even if they listen to even themselves. Because for me to take a decision to relate with you, I must be able to ask myself certain questions.
Is it because the citizenry has become so naive, weak, suppressed, and cannot speak, or we are part of this problem we are crying about?
No, you see, we are not naive.
No, but we are not naive.
No,
we know the things happening are not good.
Yeah, it's because,
but we sit on the fence
no,
and do.
We are not angry enough. That is it. We are not angry enough.
Are you saying that you are not angry, or some people are not angry enough?
Listen, I may be one single voice that can sit on television and look our president in the eyes and tell him he's failing. You understand that? How many Ghanaians will be able to do that? You understand that? So what we need to do is, one, our leaders are not even answering to us. You ask questions, they are not providing you with answers. So you are living in a void. You understand that? And in certain cases, if they are not comfortable with what you are doing or what you are saying, they said they are goons after you. Some of us are not afraid to die. You understand that? Because we love our nation so much. I have children, I have grandchildren, and when I am dead and gone, they are going to be, what country am I leaving behind for them? Even those who are leading us, they are so greedy. Look at what is happening even within our own country. It is as if those who are running affairs in Ghana do not know what is happening to the ordinary person. Because the more we talk about things that are happening, the hardship we are going through and all that, their communicators come and tell us we are on course. On which course? Of course, the courses can be, towards good or towards evil. So we are on course. To which end?
You feel worried for this country?
I have lost faith in this country succeeding. I will tell you why. It may sound as if I'm digressing. The only way this country can move forward is if our president has the moral courage to tell his ministers, freeze every contract for the next 5 years.
It doesn't make sense to me.
You see, it doesn't make sense to you. Do you know why? Contracts were issued during the previous administration. The contractors are there, they are not being paid. Today, our ministers spend 75 to 95% of their time issuing new contracts. When they complaining there is no money, you know what? When they issue the contracts, they take their 10%. So whatever happens, whether you are paid or not, they've got theirs in advance. And they keep on issuing the contracts. So once you continue doing this...
I think I understand it, but Doc, you see, just hold your patience, and want to do something briefly at this stage. I told you that I will be speaking to some former soldiers who were members of ECOWAS, and one of them has joined us on the line. Good evening.
Fine, Vanessa.
I'm happy to speak to you, and this is a very sensitive topic. When you heard ECOWAS leaders issue a 1-week ultimatum that they will go to Niger, for you as a former soldier who has seen it all, seen blood, seen human beings killed, seen rotten bodies on the streets, looked at the faces of poor people who have nowhere to go, what ran through your minds, or your mind or your vein?
I wasn't happy about it, but I've been to ECOWAS. Although I've been to ECOWAS 15, I didn't go ECOWAS 1, but I went to ECOWAS 15 when I was the last corporal. But when the thing happened, it wasn't good for them to rush into all these things. They should have sit down and negotiate with the coup leaders so that they could have a peaceful negotiation. Because I've been to Liberia before, and when I was in Liberia, what happened was that ECOWAS 15, it wasn't easy. when Charles Taylor was misbehaving, our late president, His Excellency President Rawlings, said, in fact, the way Charles Taylor was doing, they was sponsoring for the Sanko to go to Sierra Leone to be massacring, amputating people, they asked us to leave that place. And what we saw, although by that time when we were there, it was peacekeeping. It wasn't, we were not in war with Liberia, Charles Taylor. So they should have sit down and negotiate and see the way forward.
Now, so I understand you perfectly. Can I confirm, because I have two names we plan to speak to. Are you W01 Jacob Konzoni, or you are?
Yeah, Konzoni, yeah.
Yes, very good. So W01 Jacob Konzoni retired. Now,
yes,
if you look at Niger today, and you look at Liberia then, and don't forget that we have Mali, we have Burkina Faso, and to a larger extent, we are hearing Guinea and Chad who are expressing interest in supporting Niger. If you look at the circumstances then and now, don't forget Niger has some relations with some jihadists they've been fighting with or working together with. Would you say technically it makes sense to rush into a war?
No, it doesn't make sense to rush to a war, because we need a diplomatic dialogue, not to rush to a war. Because no, we shouldn't forget that we are just neighbors, and war, you don't go to war we are not preparing very well. And when you are going to that another country, you can occupy it, but you can't hold the ground because you don't know the ground. You only have it in the map, but
okay.
You can't
hold
it.
All right. So before you go, if you can do this in 30 seconds, because later in this conversation we'll speak to another W01 who has also been in one of those countries where ECOWAS was. What do you think will be the mood in the military camps as their leaders beat war drums? Happy, ready, skeptical, or angry?
Before you go to war, you have to prepare very well.
Okay. I think your response is loaded. I'm so grateful for your time. Jacob Konzoni, retired, a former ECOWAS soldier who has shared some brief experience with us. We don't have much time. I told you we have two parts of this interview. And so thank you again. And Doc, listening to him and being a security personnel, he's very tactical and managing the choice of words, but he's blunt. Don't make wrong decisions.
That's right. You see, because the point also is that ECOWAS has even jumped the gun. The people, the military have taken over in Niger. Then you threaten them with invasion before you start diplomatic negotiations. I mean, nobody does that.
Trust is lost.
You see, the trust is completely gone.
Our leaders, don't they have advisors? Don't they have military advisors?
Do they listen? Do they listen?
How would you feel if I suggest that an old man like you don't think? How do you feel?
I feel insulted.
And you think our leaders don't feel insulted when people continue to tell them that they are disgracing old age?
No, they are insulting themselves. They are making themselves look senile. And that is the bottom line. Because
is it power and wealth that has made them look stupid in the eyes of reasoning people?
No, you see, in the late 60s and early 70s, military coups became the in thing. So once the fire is lit somewhere, it spreads across the sub-region. So every leader is beginning to think I could be next on the, on the coup agenda. You understand that? So the fear of being kicked out blunts their thinking. It could be you next. It could be me. So let us take a hard line.
So they've become protectionists.
Exactly. You see, it is the fear that it could be. But the question they need to ask themselves, how are they governing their own country? Do they, you see, there is something in marketing. When you sell products, we have what we call after-sales service. So when you are running a country, you are governing people. There is the need to want to find out how the people are seeing your governance. You understand that? That will inform you as to your next line of action at every given time.
Now, if you look at the
our leaders don't do
if you look
that.
at the wave of coup d'etats that are happening within the sub-region, if you look at the sentiments among people in countries where this hasn't happened, in as much as they are saying we don't want coup, they are harboring anger. And if you listen to what Obasanjo said, he said the youth of African countries must blame themselves for the lack of accountability as far as democracy is concerned and why they are suffering.
Exactly, that's why I said.
Is it a small wave that is gradually building up that is likely to explode one day?
You see, I am privy to certain, things that I cannot say on air. But I know very well that the youth of Africa are networking. They are networking. And so once it begins as a first step, the next steps are going to follow. And they are not stupid. And a good number of them, have had their education even in the West. You understand that? So what our leaders need to do right now is, I don't know what the defense chiefs are going to meet in Accra for tomorrow. I hope and pray that they also don't come out to advise their presidents and their commanders-in-chief to go to war. If they do, and this thing emanates from Ghana, immediately Nigeria closed its border and disconnected power supply to Niger. The embassy was burnt down. So, and Ghana is hosting this. Any statement that comes, because Ghana is the host, right? So it's very likely that our chief of defense staff is likely to read whatever communique is there. Are we protecting our embassy in Niger? I'm not saying that our embassy is going to be touched.
But the consequences
the reality,
are grave.
Exactly.
Doc, I'll come to you. It's getting interesting, but at a point, I have XWO Aloginu Anthony, a former ECOWAS soldier on the line. Deliberately search for many I could get hold of. You are welcome to our program tonight. This Ideas Exchange, sir.
Thank you.
Are you a wounded soldier?
No, I'm not a wounded soldier.
You came back alive.
I'm alive.
And how do you feel when you reflect on some of your colleagues who went in good faith to help bring peace to a country, and today they have remained as bones or rotten bones under the earth because they had to die a painful death?
Thank you, sir. Fighting a war in Liberia is very tedious and dangerous, because to go to intervention in Liberia or peacekeeping in Liberia is very dangerous, because we risk our life to fight for your mother, your sister nation, to bring everlasting peace. And what happened in Liberia today, some of our people lost their life. Some of them are wounded. Those people lost their life. Their children, nobody is taking care for them, and they are suffering. So to me, to send a soldier to the war, to go and fight or to intervention, it's not good.
Okay,
Everything it should be a dialogue.
All right. So if you look at Niger today, and you look at Liberia 20 years ago, 30 years ago, you want to look at Sierra Leone, you want to look at other West African countries where ECOWAS had its presence, either for peacekeeping or were pushed the world to fight back. Do you think that it's going to be easy just to rush into Niger?
Yeah. To rush to Niger to fight or to go to intervention, I think that it should be a dialogue. It should not be something which we can rush our soldiers in.
Okay.
Because they are also a sovereign country, have a big army.
Okay, I'm interested in that aspect, have a big army. But shortly, if you can do this in 1 minute or 30 seconds, I'll be grateful. Now,
okay.
As a soldier, you are always a soldier. And I know pretty well that soldiers have very strong network, especially with ex-servicemen. When you have gossips with your colleagues still in uniform, what is the mood?
Pardon again.
When you have your gossips with your colleagues in uniform, what is their mood?
Today, I can say that those days we commit our life, we commit ourselves to the work, dedicated ourselves to the nation, to serve other countries. And today, the soldiers we are having are not the soldiers we have tomorrow. So everything what I want, because we start in Sierra Leone and Liberia, we know how it is. So
I understand you.
The authorities must be proper.
Okay, I think it's loaded. These are security issues, and so wouldn't go far. Thank you very much, ex-WO Aloginu Anthony, former ECOWAS soldier, for this time. We are grateful. We pushed you and begged to give us this insight. And I'm interested in what you have said, loaded, that the soldiers we have today are not as well trained as they used to be. Those days we call them zombie. I hope they will not come and beat me. Doc, before we wrap up, because I have another very important interview, because next week there's going to be a trade conference in Ghana. Accra is hosting a trade conference among 3 countries, a global, I would call it a global trade conference, Vanuatu, Democratic Republic of Congo, and Ghana. The representatives are here. We're having a beautiful conversation. You see how beautiful a certain small country made up of chain of islands are, and how they are developing their country, and we are here digging our ground in the name of Galamsey and stealing money. I want to share something on the screen, and that will help you to give us your concluding remarks. This is about the African Union, and in fact, my producers, you have named it weak regional blocks, double standards or so. Yes, it is unlike other regional organizations such as European Union, which sets certain democratic criteria. The only criteria for joining the AU is that the applicant must be an African state. As a result, the AU has not always taken a collective and unified response to coups and other unconstitutional changes to power. A case in point is in Mali and Chad coup, where many saw the justification of the Chad coup and the condemnation of the Mali coup as an example of leaders speaking both ends of their mouth. Chad has a major effective army in West and Central Africa. Surrounding states rely on it for security. This may well have influenced the stance the AU took on the Chad coup. Double standards. You use the word democracy. If you are advising our president, and by extension, West African leaders, look into the camera and speak to them as an elderly statesman who loves Ghana and thinks about, and you are thinking about my children.
You see, we should not pander to the whims. We are Ghanaians. We have our own way of thinking. We have our own way of doing things. Let us not dance to the music of the West. Like you have just read, the things that, you see, when the coup is supported, then the Western countries are behind it. When they are not involved in the coup, that is when they speak against
That is where the puppetism comes in.
Exactly.
Somebody was asking me, is it a word? It's actually a word.
It is.
It is.
You understand that? When they mastermind the coup, they support it. But when the people rise up themselves, they are against it. That is the double standard of the West. And we pander to whatever the West. We think that whatever comes from the West is correct. Whatever comes from the East is... Look, Russia must not toy with Africa. China must not toy with Africa. Europe must not toy with Africa. France especially should leave Africa alone. And America should leave our soil. Then we can have our peace.
Thank you.
Because the jihadist groups were a creation of the West.
My guest is Dr. Akofa Segbefia. He's a communications consultant, a lecturer, and a motivational speaker. He said a lot. And his concluding remarks made me feel like we have been indoctrinated and we've become stupid or foolish as a people because of our orientation. When I was growing up, Abrofu Mango, Abrofu Kube, Abrofu Mpua, Abrofu Abrobe, Abrofu Kube, whatever. Everything Abrofu is good. I'll stop here.